I have to confess, I made a mistake in our last video which led to an internal crisis. I accidentally mentioned that Senna followed her father's steps, while it was obviously Lucian's father's steps. I mean, it's part of the overall story arc. How could I have made that mistake? Then again, all of these videos are literally over an hour long, and I edit them down to 20 minutes. Mistakes can happen. At least in this case, we will cover the complete story of Lucian and Senna soon. So, if you find any other mistakes, tell me below and I'll pin the comments. And here we are, the last video on the cards of Legends of Runeterra. This was quite a journey for me because I have never before released one video per day for a week. Honestly, I have no idea how people do this. And after we are done with this video, we will finally go back to normal lore, the champion roadmap, and don't forget that I also have the book. I got some interesting things to show you from there. But anyway, we are so close to the end, so let's get right into it. Let's start with Draven. This picture doesn't show us anything super interesting, besides this one woman that may reappear later, and also you can see the main building of the Immortal Bastion in the background. The description says, "You want an autograph? Get in line, pal." The upgraded version has the same description, but you can see that here he is inside the arena. In the background you can see a small shoutcaster who will reappear later, and you can see that Draven defeated a Minotaur. Now this isn't just any Minotaur, this specific guy will appear later as well. Notice that he can easily be recognized with the amount of jewelry he has, and one of his horns was replaced with a metal piece. Then we have Draven's Whirling Death, which just shows his mustache. And then there is Spinning Axe. Yeah, his brother would win one-on-one. But you see those axes spiraling? It's art. It is art. The quote of Arena Regulator. Here it is cool to see that even those who attend the arena matches, they know that Darius is stronger than Draven. It could be because they watched one of our videos. But then again, Draven only has 2 axes. Once he throws them away, he's screwed. Also, I wonder if those feathers on the axe actually help it guide through the air. Then we have Katarina. No sir, just a flash of red. Next thing I know, I look up and it was a slaughterhouse in there. The quote of a Demacian border guard. Of course, here Katarina isn't in Demacia, she's obviously in Noxus. And looking at the sides, it seems like you can see the crests of different houses. But unfortunately, we don't know the crests of these houses. We just know the names. There is House Kythera, there is Dukuto, but we really don't know any of their symbologies. And the upgraded version shows us Katarina in action. This is what the description was talking about. These are probably the Demacian border guards. Then there is Katarina's Death Lotus, which just shows us what she did a second ago. But then we have Vladimir. And when it gets to Vladimir, things get a bit more interesting. You see, in the story on Universe, Vladimir is in a remote place. He has his own mansion in the shadows of Noxus. And over the years of hiding in this remote mansion, people simply forgot that he ever existed. That was his plan. Vladimir always comes out of the shadows, he changes history, and then he goes back to hiding so no one can ever hunt him down. However, as you'll see, in these cards, Vladimir has quite the following. So if these cards are to be canon, they probably take place months after the last story we know, because in that story, Vladimir commissioned a painter to paint him his own portrait. And Vladimir always does this before he changes history again. At this point, he has dozens of these paintings, each painting showing him before a big turning point. Anyway, the point is, these cards might continue the story of Universe. The description says, vicious, cold, cruel, intriguing, perspective, charming, irresistible. And the upgraded version shows him jumping out of a different mansion. I'm not sure if this is his own mansion, which would be actually quite cool, because we have only read the descriptions, but we have never seen it before. Considering the man at the bottom is wearing red clothes, in the style of the Crimson Colt, which is Vladimir's following, it might be Vladimir's mansion. And on top of it, remember that on Universe we learned that the path to the mansion is surrounded by gardens. And it is possible that these flowers might be a hint towards that. Then there is Vladimir's transfusion. It's give and take, my dear. You give, I take. And then there is Crimson Pact. Again, these are all just blood splooshes. But then we get Darius. An iron will and a titan strength. There is no finer general to lead the TRIFARIAN Legion. Quote from Jericho Swain himself. Now, what is awesome about this is that everyone would expect Noxus going against Demacia. But that's not part of Darius' story. Currently, Darius is leading numerous missions towards the north, specifically around the Iron Spike Mountains, where Noxus is mining dark iron, which they turn into the black armor and weapons they have. And looking at the dead guy at the bottom, you can clearly see it's a Freljordian. So this is a really cool reference to the fact that Darius is expanding the empire towards the borders of Freljord. That's where Noxus has its main battles now. Of course, the Trifarian Legion is one of the most elite squads in the Noxian army. Those guys will appear again quite often. And the upgraded version of Darius shows us a couple of moments before the last picture. A really cool detail here is how shiny his armor is. You can see what it looked before and after the battle. Then there is Darius'S Decimate. Sometimes it takes a tactical genius to break a fortress. Sometimes you just have to hit harder. The quote of Darius. Then there is Affectionate PORO. Again, as I mentioned numerous times before, if a PORO is not in Freljord, maybe we shouldn't consider it canon. Noxus has no room for weak... Will someone get this damn thing off me? The quote of Darius. Then there is Blade's Edge, which shows us one of Katarina's blades. In the right hands, a blade can cut through anything, and I do mean anything. The quote of Katarina. Then there is Draven's biggest fan, because remember, Draven is a star in the arena. You want an autograph? Get in line, pal. You know, because he's acting like his hero. Just instead of a spinning axe, he has a slingshot. And then we have Elixir of Wrath. When the open hand is declined, there is always the fist. Quote of a Noxian axiom. So just like the numerous elixirs we saw before, this is another item that finally gets its own lore. Now we know that the Elixir of Wrath is from Noxus. Then we have Guile. The name might be awkward, but remember that Noxus is led by 3 principles. Vision, Might and Guile, represented by Darius, Swain and LeBlanc. Allow your enemies enough rope to hang themselves and you'll save yourself the effort. The quote of LeBlanc herself. Unfortunately, besides this one card, we won't see more of LeBlanc. But there is a cool detail on this bust, which are the Dark Roses. Of course, these are a reference to the Black Rose, which is the hidden cabal in the shadows of Noxus. And of course, LeBlanc is in charge of it. Then there is Legion Rearguard. Now the name here says Legion. It doesn't say Trifarian Legion. That's because these two are technically 2 different squads. I actually learned this from the book. There, besides the Trifarian Legion, it also describes the Legion, which is also led by Darius. But it seems to be that the Legion is a lower rank of the Trifarian Legion. Either way, these are supposed to be elite warriors nonetheless. Only, this guy doesn't seem to be so elite. In Noxus, where soldiers are revered for their audacity on the battlefield, rearguard duty is nothing short of a punishment. So yeah, these guys are pretty much just the cleanup soldiers. They have nothing to do on the front lines. Now surprisingly, I would expect this picture to be in another battle with Freljord. But a lot of the local people, which can be distinguished by not wearing armor, look more like pirates. I mean, this guy has a sword similar to Katla's, and that guy has a coat. I don't think Freljordians wear these, nor do they use these kinds of swords. So this battle might be actually taking place on one of the islands around Bilgewater. Then there is Legion Saboteur. Our shield breakers can split a man in 2, but the Legion has other talents at its disposal when it requires more discreet touch. Another quote from Jericho Swain. And actually, when we realize that this might be taking place in the same place as the picture before, we are pretty much guaranteed to be in Bilgewater, because these guys are definitely pirates. However, we might also be in Shurima, because this naval clothing is also popular in Shuriman ports. And remember, Noxus is spreading to Shurima too. Either way, we are not in Freljord. But looking at the map, you can see that there is a figure representing Freljordian fleet. With that said, I really can't read the map. No matter which way I look at it, I can't recognize any part of it. That little island could be Bilgewater upside down, which means that the person would have to be pointing at Shurima or Targon. But Targon doesn't have this shape. What's possible is that this is a close-up of the Bilgewater Islands, and in that case, I have no idea what Freljordians would be doing there. The last thing to note here are the shield breakers from the quote. Swain said that these guys can split a man in 2. And remember that quote. We'll see what these guys are at the end. Then there are the sabotage bombs, which you could see the person before holding in her hand. It's a simple Noxian explosive. Then we got some of the spiders we saw during the Shadow Isles cards, so we will just skip over those. However, there is one spider card at the end of the Noxian cards that we should have mentioned during the Shadow Isles cards. I totally missed that one and it will alter the tiny story Elise has here, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. Then there is Arena Battlecaster, and this is the shoutcaster you could see in the background of DRAVEN'S art. Also, if you remember the giant flames from before, that wasn't part of the arena stage. Those came from flamethrowers operated by people. The description says, "He roared with glee. For a moment, the heart of the arena pulsed in time with his, and the excitement of the assembled masses was clutched in his triumphant hand." It's pretty much a description of how much the Battlecaster enjoys his job. Also, if you look at the background, you can see some familiar faces. Right behind him, we can see Draven. To the right, we can see the defeated Minotaur. Then there is Draven's ex. Then there is something else. And on the left, you can see the Feral Reckoner, which will come back as a separate card later. Then there is Brothers Bond. Bonds forged in war are just as strong as those of kinship. Indeed, blood is shared in both. Quote of Legion Veteran. Also a separate card that will come back later. I just wonder, how come those feathers don't burn? And then we have the first of the Crimson followers. There is a group of 4 followers who are absolutely great. When you play these guys in game, they have really cool interactions with each other. And they are all part of the Crimson cult. Now, one thing to note. You'll notice that when it comes to Hemomancy, that spell school is connected to pleasure. In like ecstasy kind of way. So yes, it is undeniable that there will be a lot of adult references. Such as the one you can see right here. These two are our first 2 female Crimson followers. I'm not even going to go through the description. In the next card you can see the same 2 female characters, one on the left and one on the right. Perhaps a couple of moments before the last picture, but then you can also see one more guy who will also appear later as a Crimson follower. Now all of these guys have their own names. I know this because again when you play these guards they do talk to each other. And although it looks like she calls this person Edwin, Edwin is probably the guy in the foreground, because there is one more person as you'll see. There are 4 in total. Also notice these vials on the table. These are usually filled with blood, and they are carried around by Edwin. And it seems to suggest that these vials are like a drug to the Crimson followers. Again, in an ecstasy kind of way. A cool detail in the background is the Minotaur again. Now we are not sure if this is the specific Minotaur from before, but hey, Minotaurs are used in the arenas a lot. I mean, Alistar used to be a gladiator too. Then there is Legion Drummer. The Legion spread the Empire's reach with every beat of her drums. Nothing could stop them. Nothing did. I like this direct contradiction with Demacia, because in the Demacian cards we learn that they don't use any music whatsoever. When Demacians charge in, they use the beat of the hoofs of their horses as the battle music. But on the other side, Noxus just straight up uses drums. Then there is Legion Grenadier. Every Noxian is taught that a life spent in service to the Empire is well spent, but few spend their lives as spectacularly as the Legion's Grenadiers. You see, one thing to note here. When I saw these grenades, I thought that this guy is going to demolish the gates or something like that. But no, this is a bomber who is just taking his own life. There is no battle around, there is just peace and quiet. That's because this is a surprise attack. Again, looking at the background, I believe that this is the same battle as was shown with the Legion Rearguard. Then we have Trifarian Glory Seeker. Earning a place in the Trifarian Legion is good enough for most, but not all. Again, the Trifarian Legion is the highest rank of the Legion. It's an equivalent to the Dauntless Vanguard in Demacia. And just like the soldiers of the Dauntless Vanguard want to become legends, some of the people of the Trifarian Legion want to do the same. Here, notice the guy in the background. This is General Farron, the strongest unit Noxus has. We will see more of him later too. Then there is Trifarian Hopeful. You'll earn your title when your axe is blunt with battle and your boots soaked with blood. Quote of Legion Veteran. Now here I quickly want to mention the Arachnoid Sentry again. We did talk about this card when we covered Shadow Isles. There I thought that this guy was this guy. Because let's be honest, he looks exactly the same. But that is not the case. For some reason, these guys are different people. And you will see why that is the case later. Then there is Arena Bookie, a Yordle in Noxus, despite Noxians hating Yordles. But it kinda makes sense because this Yordle is rich and therefore powerful. And also he's in charge of the arena, which is the most popular entertainment in Noxus. As I read through the description, remember the names. You bet on Shuraza as sole survivor? And that Ionian kid? Sure, he's missing an arm, but he ain't dead. Makes him a survivor, see? Course you could always double down. Shiraza is the known gladiator here. I wonder if that kid that is missing an arm will appear later too. But I couldn't notice anything even in the background. If you guys find anything, feel free to tell me. Either way, in the background you can see the flags of the arena, you can see that he's sipping a wine, and there is a picture of Darius. Which is strange because Darius is not supposed to be a gladiator. I'm not really sure why that picture is here. Then there is Blood for Blood. Nothing is messier than a Hemomancer's first lesson. And then we have Edwin, the fourth member of the Crimson Cult that I told you about. This is the person who is carrying the blood vials, which again are more like ecstasy to these guys. Out of all of them, this guy is my favorite. He has amazing voice in the game, and he is just full of character. In this picture, remember this scene, because there will be another card later that will show the exact same scene but from different angle. I love how the artist just had so much fun with these. And the last thing to mention here is that yes, these two female characters are the female characters from before. Then we have Culling Strike. Everyone dies. The weak just die faster. Then we have Legion Marauder. The Trifarian Legion is thrilled by opportunistic brigands who prey on the weak and injured in its wake. So this guy is more like the brutal executioner. But notice that with this guy we are on a new battlefield in Demacia. Then we have Might. Just like Guile, this is another leading trait. When I say subtly is overrated, that doesn't mean it isn't good. It's just overrated. The quote of Darius himself. Then we have Noxian Guillotine, probably the most brutal art we have ever had. And notice that the Noxian Guillotine is cutting through a member of the Dauntless Vanguard. To Darius, mercy is a deft blow. Then we have Reckless Trifarian. Recklessness is a fault. Tempered by the Legion, it becomes a tool. Quote from Jericho Swain. Looking at the armored guys around and the green grass, it seems like we are back in Demacia. And then we have Vision, the final Noxian trait. Those who cannot see the future have no place in it. Quote from Jericho Swain, the Grand General of Noxus. Then we have Basilisk Rider. Of course we know that instead of horses, sometimes Noxus is using basilisks. And surprisingly, these beasts come from Basilish, the place where Draven and Darius were born. This particular unit does use horses. Not just for riding, the beasts find them delicious. And now we got to the different angle of the shot I told you before. If you're wondering about the descriptions, these guys are attending a ball. And they are going because they can feed on unsuspecting people. This guy, the one in the middle, is the most powerful of them. He is actually teaching the others more hemomancy tricks. But as I said before, it is cool to see how much fun the artists had here. Then there is crowd favorite, a gladiator, which, now I should mention it, in Noxus whoever is in the arena is not called a gladiator. They probably don't even know that word. These warriors are called reckoners, because when they get into the arena, that is their reckoning. Some reckoners are adored for their charisma, others for their swift techniques. Vesit possesses neither, but no one turns a rival to splatter with more efficiency. Now, looking at the picture we saw before in the arena, maybe the arc we saw on the picture is actually this reckoner's weapon. And then we have the Legion Veteran, the person who left a lot of quotes on the other card's descriptions. He returned from the war on the brink of death, restored only by his husband's touch and the apothecary's balms. Noxus spared no expense to ensure his expert counsel, long after his fighting years. See, it's kinda cool how Noxus includes everyone, no matter their race, gender or orientation. Which at the beginning, Demacia did this too. But those days are gone. It almost makes you feel like Noxus are the good guys now. Which, let's be honest, they were never the bad guys. Unless you count Mordekaiser's reign. That is a different can of worms. Then we have Shiraza the Blade, the person mentioned by the arena bookie. Now, notice the description. It won't make sense now, but when we have a look at the guy behind her, everything will fall in place. He said what? That man has bricks for brains. Can't fold those shoulders though. Then we have Trifarian Assessor. This picture really reminds me of Star Wars for some reason. I really like those black robes. It takes a ruthless discerning eye to select those worthy enough to become part of the Trifarian Legion. But she can sort the sheep from the wolves a mile away. So this person is actually recruiting soldiers for the Trifarian Legion. And then we have the spider card I mentioned before. I totally missed this when I was looking through the Noxian cards. So we should have mentioned this one in the Shadow Isles video. Because this is the fate of the guy before. Which means that the other person had to be someone totally different. Because I doubt that after this scene, Elise was able to charm him and bring him to the Shadow Isles. I just think that she probably just paralyzed him here. Poor guy. Then we have Decisive Maneuver. Any fool can throw overwhelming force at the enemy. It takes vision to conceal that force until the decisive moment. Quote of Jericho Swain. Again, looking at the map, I am not exactly sure where this is. This road almost feels like the road up to Freljord. But then it wouldn't make sense why there's ocean on either side of this. Actually, I have no idea where this is. And then we have Intimidating Roar. Here, notice that the Minotaur doesn't have one of his horns, and it was replaced with an iron blade, a thing we saw in DRAVEN'S art. And the description is the shoutcasting of the arena battlecaster. He's taking a deep breath. We might get a... Yes, there we have it, folks. That's Thunder's famous war cry. We are all shaking in our boots here. Thunder! And that is still not the end of this guy. Then we have Kato, the arm. This is the person we saw at the back of the Shiraza card. And the description will complete their story. Shiraza is a great girlfriend, friend. We are in no way dating, but if we were, I would like her to know that I wish her happy anniversary. Thank you, no more questions. So yeah, these guys are totally dating. And then we have Legion General. And here things get a bit more interesting. The description says, all Noxians know the 3 principles of strength, but if a soldier is to rise through the ranks, they must learn to master them. Now the interesting thing here is that on the website where I got the official art for all these cards, this card was originally called the Lost General. And it was pointed out to me on our Discord, is that when you play this card together with Darius, there are some interesting interactions. And the most interesting interaction is when Darius says, "The Legion welcomes your return, General." And of course, we know only one general that went missing, and that is General Dooku To, Katarina's father. And what is even more interesting is that this guy gets bonus every time someone is stunned or recalled. And of course, when it comes to Noxian cards, recalling is connected to Katarina, who actually levels up that way. Because recalling here is a different word for her shampoo. So this is just speculation, but this might be a reference to the General Dooku To. Then we have Reckoning, which is simply the reckoning for the Reckoners. Then we have Katarina's shampoo. By the time you've seen the blade, it's far too late. Then we have TRIFARIAN Shieldbreaker, a person we have mentioned at the beginning. I don't have patience for siege. Send in the Shieldbreakers. Quote from Darius. You can notice some really interesting design here. Notice that unlike the other soldiers of the TRIFARIAN Legion, this guy has no shoulder pads. And that is simply because he needs to do massive overarching strikes with his axe. That's how he splits shields in two. So it's cool to see that little detail that they didn't give him shoulder pads because he needs that free movement. Then we have Battering Ram. Sir, they are refusing to open their gates. They've demanded to speak with Darius, but he's 2 days right away. Should we send riders? Oh, that won't be necessary. Notice how the ram looks like a wolf. Because yes, this is a reference to wolf as part of Kindred. Remember, Noxians don't necessarily worship the lamb, but they surely worship the wolf. And then we have Minotaur Reckoner, which is the guy we saw from before. He has all the jewelry we saw in DRAVEN'S art, and he has a metal horn. Notice that in the background you can see how many battles he won. Or it could be the targets he's trying to take down. It's a bit strange because you can see Draven and Katarina here. And I doubt that he defeated either of them, so I'm not really sure what's the meaning of this. The description says, I don't care who wronged you or what they did. You need me to make it right in the pit, you pay up front. There's no discount for sad stories. So this guy is settling the scores. But that still doesn't explain why is Draven and Katarina here. And then there is Savage Reckoner, which I think I previously called Feral Reckoner. That's a mistake on my part. But yes, he's the guy we saw in the arena before. Next up, Claws. Last time was a bloody takedown versus the Psycho 5. Now, the Psycho 3. Alright, taking bets on today's victims. 4-1. Carl, the arena bookie. Which is cool because now we know that the Yordle is called Carl. Also, I wonder if this Savage Reckoner is actually a Freljordian. Because remember, most of these Reckoners are prisoners, just like Xin Zhao. So this guy might actually be a Freljordian prisoner. And the last card we got here is Captain Farron. As I said, this is the strongest card Noxus has. And I mean, look at his size. Can you blame him? Young Ben Farron was labeled a menace, unstable, unacceptable. In the ranks of Noxus, he was embraced, awarded, unstoppable. Now this is an amazing reference to Zone, because Zone and Noxus have really good relationship, and these two cities trade quite often. In fact, sometimes they trade people. Every now and then Noxian citizens are sent to the Zonite mines, and every now and then people from the Zonite mines are sent back to Noxus. For example here, Captain Farron came from the Zonite mines, deep in the sump. But then you may remember Urgot, who was actually a Noxian commander, who was fighting in the service of Borem Darkwill. But before Swain seized control over Noxus, he sent Darkwill's followers on missions around Runeterra, and he sent Urgot into the sump levels of Zone, where Urgot was imprisoned in the mines. So not only is Captain Farron a really cool card for Noxus, but he's also a reference to Urgot's story, which makes it that much cooler. But that is it for Noxus, and that is it for the cards of Legends of Runeterra. Now, some people may mention that yes, this won't be the last time we will have a look at Legends of Runeterra, because they already plan to add more cards to the game, which means that there will be more lore. My guess is that the next faction added into the game is gonna be either Shurima or Bilgewater. These two are the fan favorites. I don't think Targon is going to be next. But with that said, I really wanna thank you guys for sitting through these. These really weren't easy to make. I have never before released a video every day for a week. And now, I am finally going to sleep. Next time we will have a look at the champion roadmap. Because Harrowing is coming. And although I need sleep, this won't make it any easier. Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have neat mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.